Today, we're diving into the story of one voter's journey, a journey from being a true believer to becoming completely disillusioned with modern Scottish politics. It's a fascinating look at how a single economic claim could unravel everything, leading to a tactical vote, a feeling of betrayal, and a pretty stark conclusion about political trust itself.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The whole analysis really hinges on this one big idea. To truly understand politics, you've got to separate the reality from the romance. Peel back the stories we want to believe and just look at what's actually happening. This is the lens we're going to be using for everything that follows.
So, to make sense of today, the author says we have to look back, way back. They found these three repeating patterns in Scottish history, patterns of leadership and loyalty that they believe are playing out again right now in the modern political landscape. First up, you've got this classic showdown, right? On one side, you have William Wallace, the romantic hero, the idealist who fought with his heart on his sleeve and, well, was betrayed and executed for it. Then you have Robert the Bruce. He's the total opposite, the pragmatist, the political operator who played both sides and only went all in when he knew he could win. One became a martyr, the other became a king. A big difference. And that brings us to the third pattern. And this one's a bit more cynical, the Jacobites. Here, you have this story where incredibly loyal followers were basically used as pawns in a much bigger game. The cause was sold as being for Scotland, but the author argues it was really all about restoring a royal dynasty, with big players like France jumping in for their own benefit. And the heartbreaking part? The loyal believers are the ones who pay the ultimate price, while the leaders pretty much got away. Okay, so keep those three patterns in your head. The idealist, the pragmatist, and the used. Because now we're jumping forward to 2016. This is the moment the author's entire political world just cracks wide open. And it all starts with one single claim, made by the then First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon. And it all came down to this one number, 100,000. That's it. For this voter, this single figure was a complete game changer. It changed absolutely everything. So the warning itself was pretty straightforward. A hard Brexit could really hurt the Scottish economy. But here's the twist. For our author, it wasn't actually about the 100,000 jobs. The real wake-up call was the logic they used to get to that number. That's what set off all the alarm bells. So what did they do? They decided to run a little experiment. They said, okay, let's take that exact logic, that less access to a market means a proportional risk to jobs, and let's just apply it consistently, everywhere. And the really wild part is, they used the government's own published data to do it. And this is what that data shows. It's a simple, uncontested fact from back then. Scotland's trade with the rest of the UK was huge, about 4 times bigger than its trade with the entire European Union combined. Now, this wasn't some buried secret. It was just a core part of Scotland's economic reality. All right, let's follow the breadcrumbs here. So the starting premise is leaving the EU single market risks 100,000 jobs. Okay, and we know the UK market is 4 times more important to Scotland. So if we use the exact same math, doesn't that imply leaving the UK puts 400,000 jobs at risk? You add them up and you get this staggering figure, a potential risk of 500,000 jobs, which is, wow. But here is the absolute key. The author is not saying Scotland would actually lose 500,000 jobs. They're saying that number is obviously ridiculous, and that is the whole point. The fact that the number is so absurd proves, in their mind, that the original argument was flawed, because it deliberately ignored the biggest piece of the economic puzzle. The logic only held up if you were looking at one part of the picture, and it fell apart the second you applied it fairly. And once that dam broke, everything started to look different. It was like a floodgate opened. The author started seeing all these other inconvenient realities that had been kind of brushed under the carpet during the independence debate. Tricky questions about how hard it is to rejoin the EU, or the massive risks of using the pound without having your own central bank to back it up. All the predictable, messy stuff that just gets in the way of a simple, emotional story. Okay, let's fast forward 8 years to the 2024 general election. All that disillusionment that started back in 2016, it all came to a head at the ballot box. For the author, it led to a purely tactical decision, one they described as being pretty grim. For this voter, and they argue for a lot of others in Scotland, their vote for Labour wasn't a sign of some newfound belief. It was just a transaction. It was a conditional vote with a single, clear purpose: to break the SNP's dominance at Westminster. So Labour wasn't getting a blank check. They were being put on notice. They were being given a test. And according to the author, that test came fast. Almost immediately after the election. And for them, the way the new Scottish Labour MPs acted wasn't just some political mistake. It was seen as a profound betrayal. A core principle had been violated. A line was crossed.
So here it was, the first big test. A vote on removing the universal winter heating payment for pensioners and restricting it. And the voting record of the newly elected Scottish Labour MPs, well, it was stark. Of the 37, 35 voted for the restriction. 2 abstained or just didn't vote. And the number who voted against it? 0. Not a single one.
So the author contacted their new MP and asked, "What's going on here?" The explanation they got back was basically a technicality. The MP said that since this is a devolved issue, the decision only affected pensioners in England, not Scotland, so it wasn't really their constituents' business. But for this voter, that explanation was a complete moral failure. They argued that a Labour MP from a unionist party should care about pensioners across the entire UK. Dismissing harm to others because of a jurisdictional border was, in their view, the very definition of nationalist thinking. And for them, that was the point of no return. So this single event wasn't seen as just a one-off incident. No, the authors saw it as the first crucial step in what they believed would become a predictable and rapid pattern of behavior from the new government. The first domino had fallen. In the author's view, this vote wasn't a test of conscience for the MPs. It was a test of pure party loyalty. And once they had proven that they would fall in line, even on a really controversial issue, the leadership felt it had a free hand. They believed they could now act without any real fear of rebellion from their own side. And what followed was a quick series of policy decisions that, for the author, just confirmed their worst fears. From rejecting compensation for the WASPy women, to a major foreign policy deal on the Chagos Islands that was never campaigned on, to extending conservative tax policies, a pattern emerged that cemented the view that promises made before an election were being quietly abandoned after it. And this all leaves us with the author's final, pretty provocative question. They draw a parallel to the decline of the Liberal Party over a century ago, a once-dominant political force that basically just faded away. So they ask, can a huge majority, one built not on genuine enthusiasm but on the collapse of an opponent, be lost just as quickly when trust is broken? That's the thought this analysis leaves us with.